All right, so we're here on the Beyond Self-Made podcast with Morgan Baggs. The I think I'll steal a line from Joe Rogan, the great and powerful Morgan Baggs.
She is.
Um, so this podcast is really about me talking to interesting people who have been through either hardships, leadership, fascinating background stories that I really hold in high regard. And so you're one of those people who I hold in high regard. And I'd love to just kind of pick your brain about your journey, see if some of the things you say might stand out for others that are trying to either reinvent themselves in their own careers or dealing with leadership issues, whatever. I pick your brain, poke
Yeah,
at you a little bit,
sounds
and
good. Well, thank you.
take some nuggets of wisdom
Oh man. All right, now I'm gonna start sweating.
to take the pressure off
Yeah,
of
that's
you, right?
it. Right.
Now, uh, Morgan Bags, a little intro from how I know you. I joined Insurgent Fitness, 20, 2020,
I would
2021.
look at us. Like, we've gone through so many different systems now.
Right. um, somewhere in there, maybe 21.
Yeah, to say 5, 6 years.
Yeah, it's been about 5 years.
Yeah.
And I had some combat experience and some rudimentary jujitsu. And something was missing in my life, and I realized it was grappling at the time. And in all honesty, for me, it was you had a schedule that made sense for me to go and try. Having said that, I went to one class and I said, this is home. And so Morgan's the coach of Insurgent uh, Insurgent Fitness, Jiu Jitsu, mixed martial arts. There's a workout center, cold plunge, sauna,
Yeah,
the whole gamut.
yeah, kind of the whole gamut. Yeah.
MMA, kickboxing.
Yeah, so it was Michelle's idea. I mean, no matter what she says, she came up with the idea. She came up with the name. Um, we had already been training. I had been training in a two-car garage on the east side of town. And Michelle got really into fitness. And one day we went back to California, back where I was born. Or I was born in Oceanside, so we went back to Oceanside she loves it there. And then the hotel we were staying at was right next to Victory MMA, and they had a similar setup. And so she went over there to work out. I got stuck watching the kids, and she comes back and she was like, "This is incredible. This is something that I think we could definitely combine. My interest, your interest, and Insurgent was born, and here we are." So yeah, it's been 10 years. It'll be 10 years this August of running Insurgent.
A small business in Flagstaff surviving that long.
Yes, and through COVID.
Yeah.
We survived through COVID. It wasn't easy, but we survived through COVID, unlike a lot of the other gyms. But that was only because of, I think, circling back to what you were talking about, where you came in and joined Insurgent, and you joined it, and it was like you're missing grappling in your life, and I don't know if it was necessarily the grappling, as it was a community. You know, you're a firefighter. You did the military. It's that community I think you got more attached to, because I kind of run it like just I wouldn't say a guys club, but a place where you can just be. If you're the shy kid, you can be the shy kid. If you want to be the funny kid, you can be the funny guy. Or if you're just the guy that just wants to come in and get a good round in, get some sweat in, get that bonding, shoot just shit a little bit, learn a few things, forget about life while somebody's choking you out.
Yeah,
That's a big thing.
that is huge.
Me and Michelle were just talking about that today on our dog walk. But yeah.
Yeah, one person at one of the camps I went to, one of the instructors said we go to jujitsu for our own reasons. We stay because of our friends.
Right? I would completely agree with that.
And then in my own observations, I don't think I've seen such a melting pot of people as I do in a jiu-jitsu gym.
That is so true. And I mean, I know it's a cliche, and I know a lot of people talk about that, right? They go, "Oh, you'll get police officers on one side," and we literally do. We have police officers on one side, and we have felons on the other side that are commingling, um, and rolling and doing these things. So it's like a common denominator of this common interest,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you forget about everything else. And I think that really helps with the environment. I think obviously the coach plays a role. I don't go into politics. I don't allow it on the mat. We don't talk bad about other schools.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't do it. And I think if you kind of set some of the ground rules and you set that and you don't let those ground rules push too far, there's always boundaries. But most of the time, it's kind of like, no, we're here to, like, one of my biggest rules, I think you've even heard me say, we don't talk about business on the mat. Because we, as you know, like even our connection is through the business. Ian, Kip, all these people we know that are other business owners in town. And so they all commingle and they all work together.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get on that mat, no, don't ask about the email you sent. We're here to choke each other, forget about life, worry about what's going on in the present rather than what's going to happen in the future. And I think that's the biggest thing for me with jiu-jitsu. And I think that's within a martial art fitness. And I think that's why Insurgent appeals to so many, because they understand what we're trying to provide.
I think so. I mean, I people say I do jujitsu for the skills, or I do it for the almost like a weight training. You know, I'm building my body, or I'm losing weight, or it's my cardio. I see it as therapy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just telling Michelle, I can't remember the study, but it was an article I read today. It was about some surgeon supposedly did a 25-year study of men who would come in for cardiovascular issues, heart attacks, etc. And he would ask them all the same question: who's your best friend? And the vast majority of the men that came in and said their best friend was their wife, best friend was their kid, their recovery rate was far less, as opposed to the men that came in and said, my best friend is Bob or Mike or Ian or Kip or Cody or Sarah or any of these people that come out on the mat, right? But the ones that had that male bond to bond, they had a higher recovery rate than those that associated more of their friendships with family.
Hmm.
They hypothesized that the reason is because a man that says his wife's his best friend is you're still a husband. You're still having to perform and act, I guess, if you will. I don't know how you would as a married man, there's just a certain aspect in which you have to carry yourself. You're vulnerable, but you're not the same vulnerable that you could be vulnerable with, say, a brother that you served with, right? Mm-hmm. So, anyway, I just think that Insurgent provides that bond, whether you're male or female, is that it just creates a connection. I got kind of rambling and I got off.
No, I mean, but that's so true. And I want to get back into the history before, like how you got here. But that chemistry and that bond is so interesting to me, because I served in the military. I served in the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to minimize those bonds by any means, but I feel like through grappling, through martial arts, that has been a quicker bond with people. I can't pinpoint the why or the how, but there's something that it's almost like a cellular level that we.
Would you say it's based on intention? Because with grappling, it's out of play, while with military or service, it was out of duty? Because that really changes the whole question of why is it that I enjoy this, right? Why? I mean, sometimes I do question that. Why do we go to jiu-jitsu to get choked out by somebody?
Right.
I literally just made a joke about it yesterday. I'm like, isn't it odd that you pay me to come in to fight somebody else and you thank me for it? I mean, it's the I don't know what it is, but I do know that every what species that's social, every mammal that's a social animal, there is always an observation from our perspective, an element of play. And I think that element of play is so crucial to bonding. And I think that's what, your book talks about is that community. Yes, you're saying you're self-made, but you're not self-made because you're built on the shoulders of everybody around you to get where you're at today. Right. And if you approach everything in that sense of play, then it's more fun. It's more, it's a net zero game. Me and Michelle were talking about this. I know I'm going off on a little bit, but we were talking about this where it's like, it's a net zero game. We come into this world butt ass naked. We're meant to go out of this world butt ass naked. We're not meant to be buried in a coffin. We're not meant to be buried or burnt or anything. Burning is fine. But the idea is that we go out naked just as we came in. There's nothing in this world that we take with us materialistically. Right. And so what we do find study after study after study, anything play involved is always a positive reinforcement for us. So I try to approach a lot of my learning, especially after my injury and so forth, of play. Like you, I think you came in this week in Jiu Jitsu, right? We played a lot of games rather than just technical one, technical two, technical two. We do a lot of positional sparring, but I don't know. I'm rambling, but yeah.
There's something to it, and I think a lot of us, we either start growing up and forget about play, or maybe we find our way back into it.
And maybe that's what grappling did for you.
Yeah.
And that's why we're like, I needed grappling because it is that play, but yeah.
And it's play in a way that you can go really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in danger, you tap and you're out.
Yes.
Whereas all the boxing that I did, you go really hard. I mean, I'd be average IQ if I did box.
Man. It's just so funny how we're just talking about this. And I literally was just talking about this and somebody was just asking me, have you ever fought before? And I was like, well, professionally, no. Have I gotten into fights? Yes. But I can tell you here now, I would take grappling over being punched any day of the fucking week. Right. Absolutely. And then it goes back to what I tell parents all the time. And again, this is, I'm not wanting to raise hairs or anything, but allowing kids before they're like fully mentally developed to box each other is asinine to me. And that's why I don't have a kid striking program. Right. I mean, as you just said, I mean, if you didn't take so many hits to the head, you might be another Einstein, who knows? But the idea is that why would I want you to just get boxed in the head and fuck up the development when you can take them into a grappling sport? That's why I think wrestling is so great. It's not for everybody. Wrestling definitely is not for everybody, especially the way it's structured right now. But I think grappling is a great mechanism for younger kids because it teaches them humility. Right? We all walk away from. I mean, fuck, I walked away from that mat crying. I asked Michelle, I'm gonna quit. Fuck this. This sport sucks. But you stick at it. I don't know what it is, but you stick at it.
Draws you back.
Yeah, but the thing is I think if you can do it with kids right, like look at Magnus. Look at my own son. My own son had a lot of issues with being bullied, being not a lot of self-confidence, and so forth. And once I started jiu-jitsu, I was like, nope, our kids have to do jiu-jitsu. And that was my non-negotiable with Michelle. Thank God Michelle was like, no, I fucking completely agree. Let's do this. And we put him in, and within a year, he was a completely different kid. Look at Magnus. I mean, he came in and he was sleeping on the mat, and and now he's one of the best grapplers I got, and he's choking people out, and he's doing these amazing things, and it just helps build that confidence. And I think we need that, and I think that's what you were missing. That circles back to that. We forget to play, right? And we make fun of a lot of stuff, like even yoga. We make fun of yoga, it's jiu-jitsu and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's like you just find your shit and that works for you. And as long as it works and you have your community, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Whatever that was.
I'm going on a tangent.
For me, that's what works.
It's the
for
whiskey.
You. I know. It's the first time
I don't drink.
First time we're drinking on this podcast. So let's back up a little bit, because what I currently know about you, and I'm probably missing a few things. You're Jiu Jitsu black belt and coach.
Yeah, we'll sign the black belt, but yeah, you know how I feel about the belts.
It matters to some of us.
Yes, it does. It does.
You're owner of Insurgent. You have other side hustles, maybe I should say, or other hustles, web development, website design.
I and my wife, I drive my wife nuts. I have so many interests and things. My days start at 5 o'clock in the morning and don't stop until 10 o'clock at night. Yes, I have a lot of different interests.
Arguably philosopher.
Arguably a philosopher. We just had that conversation, but yeah, I tried the military thing. I wish I was able to make it. I was ELS'd out. I did lie to get in because I was an asthmatic. But it was one of those things like, if I could do it all back again, I would do it again. I would lie to get back in. I just had a really bad asthma attack out on PT day one day and caught me. And, as you know, in hindsight, right now, I wish I didn't do it, but I'm glad that I did. Because I know that if I had joined and had hidden the asthma, I would become more of a liability, not because of me, but to the men around me. Right? Think about me, if I was in, let's say, fucking Iraq or whatever, right? Get into a conflict, I have an asthma attack.
Now you're a liability.
Now I'm a liability. So I regret that what I did was, but I also didn't want to be an 80-year-old man looking back at my life and looking in my mirror and saying, I wish I had tried, right? I'm glad I failed, but I'm also glad that I tried. And it's taken me a long time to come to terms with that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right?
Yeah.
The captain that I had to do an exit interview with as I was exiting out, I said the same thing. I was like, I just didn't, because he was like, what the fuck did you waste our fucking time? You know how they are. And I'm just standing there and tears are rolling down my face and so forth, because it was always a dream to be a Marine like my dad and so forth. You want to follow in the footsteps of a man that you admire, and for most children and their sons, it's their dad, I hope. Yeah, so did the military thing.
Was that out of high school?
It was so I'm not a liar. I struggle with lying. Michelle will tell you to this day. When she was pregnant, she was like, I would never ask you if you thought I was fat. Not because she thought I was going to say she was fat, but because I would come back and say, no, you're pregnant, which would say that she's fat, right? In her mind. But the idea is that I don't have it in me, the capacity to lie. So right when I graduated high school, I went to the Marine Corps recruiting office and was like, sign me up, but I have asthma. I went through the whole check. Obviously, no doctor was going to sign me off. So that didn't happen. Tried to stay down in Chino Valley, here in Arizona. Going through a wacky, weird time in my life. I was living with my high school girlfriend at the time. Me and my dad were on the outs. I was 18, but still kind of in high school. And living with my high school girlfriend. It was just like this crazy time in my life. And wind up losing my job, living out of my truck for a little while off Perkinsonville Road. I don't know if you know Chino Valley, but off Perkinsonville Road. Yeah, if you drive up, going, I think, westbound on it, and drive all the way up, there's a Circle K, McDonald's. So in the mornings when I'd try to get to work, I'd go in there, park, go in the bathroom. That would where I'd be out, bath and shave and try to spruce it up a little bit before going in and working. So I did that for as long as I could until I lost my job, and then moved to Missouri. And then I tried going back into the service. And then that's where it was like more desperation. Like, I need something in my life. I hated school. So I tried doing it again, lied to get in, got shipped off, got to boot camp, had a severe asthma attack, caught recruiter's crud about a month and a half in.
Mm.
And I was there. I was almost, I just had that month and a half ago. I was on the easy side and wound up getting a really severe asthma attack and cut through recruiter's crud and got out. Went back, got stuck with my mom because me and my dad were on the outs. So I lived in Missouri for a while, got married, got divorced, you know, uh, for something that just said, get your shit in line, and went back to school.
Got married, got divorced. So let's dig a little deeper there. Because you also had a child at that time.
Yes, I did have a child at that time. So while my time in Missouri, I met a woman, fast pacing. She got into the Air Force. That's kind of how we met. It's through the military and our commonality between the military. I was hanging out in the recruiter's office all the time, and she was signed up for the Air Force. So we got together. She went and did her whole boot camp. We did all this. She got through. Very smart woman, highly, highly intelligent woman. We'll never disagreed on her intelligence. But she went a little crazy after we got done with. She got stationed in Monterey Bay for the language institute there. What is it called? Anyway, the language institute in Monterey Bay. We were there for 2 years. She got pregnant. We had Ella. She was born in Monterey, and then my Jen is her name. Got deployed. She got deployed to Korea. Per her first deployment, family wasn't allowed to follow. So this is the first time she ever left and never been around like family. Right? She grew up in a very, very small town in Missouri. Her graduating class, I think, was 12. Like we're talking, like I think the school that she was going to had elementary all the way to high school, through high school. So it was a very, very small. So she had always been through. But I think at the end of the day, when she got over there, she met somebody, she fell in love, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what happened was that she got out there, and I can't imagine what it would have been like psychologically, hormonically, or if that's even a word, how it was that because when she had Ella, right when she got off maternity leave, within 3 months, she was shipped off to Korea. So she had abandoned me, a 3-month-old baby, and was gone. Right. And I can't imagine what that would do
Psychologically.
Yeah, psychologically. And she was never the same after that. And I'm wondering if the military, that policy of separating the mother from the child, that's that debate. How do you balance this between a mother and child? And I just don't think she was capable of mentally handling something like that. Because she always wanted the kids. She was pushing for kids. Like immediately when we were born, I forced a 2-year wait, to get her through Monterey school and so forth. And yeah, I just kind of fell apart. And so anyway, she met somebody, wound up getting custody of the little one. She wanted a whole new life. And
you ended up with custody.
Yep, I ended up with full physical custody. And again, I don't blame Jen or anything. Goes back to what we're saying. Our life is our life. Our perspectives are perspectives. Of course, now I'm 44 years old and looking back and saying, okay, I don't regret that it happened, but I'm happy that it happened. I got Ella out of it. I got this a great experience. I wouldn't be where I'm at without that experience. So it's one of those, I don't have a lot of regrets looking back on my life. If I have any regrets, it's always an emotional regret in the sense of what my impact or my actions were to those around me. Not so much the choices I made. The choices I made put me where I'm at, so I don't regret those. I know a lot of people regret choices, but I think the regret is always based on the emotional impact that it had to either yourself or to those around you.
Interesting.
So there's a definite division between that, because the choice wouldn't be where you're at. But I regret a lot of when I look at my life, a lot of it's just emotional turmoil that I may have caused. I'm not saying that I have caused, just may have caused that based on my own now reflections looking back, especially after my accident. So, so kid, get divorced, At that time, when we finally did decide to call it quits, she had come back from Korea by that time. Or no, she hadn't come back yet. We were in Texas at the time before she got shipped off because she had to go from Monterey. She graduated, and then they 3 month leave, and then they shipped her off to Texas. We went there for like 2 months before they shipped her off to Korea. So when they did that, I came back here to Arizona, started school again, started getting my bachelor's in software engineering, taking care of this kid. Yeah.
Working?
Working. I was working full time. I was living with my dad. He was living out of Chino at that time. My job at the time was at what they would consider even the attorney when I was going through my divorce was like, you need to find an actual job because I was playing blackjack professionally at that time. Because was at Yavapai Casino. Was it Yavapai Casino? Prescott Resort? I can't remember what the one of Prescott is on top of the hill. But they had one down the bottom. I think it was Yavapai Casino. But they had, yeah, Bucky's is on the top.
Okay.
I think. Anyway, doesn't matter. I got into blackjack and was doing very well and did that for a living. Did that for the first year. Now, again, I wasn't paying rent. I was living with my dad. So when I say I was doing well, it's perspective. But I was making enough to be able to provide, right? I was paying all my bills. I was being able to put money away and so forth. And then when I finally got my divorce, I had all my paperwork handed over to the judge showing revenue. And he's like, you need an actual like job. So I said, okay, cool. So I got a job at Yavapai Casino because they knew me and built blackjack. So I did that for a while. And then got divorced, met Michelle. At that time, I was considering going back because I always wanted to be a doctor, work in pediatrics. Especially because when I was in Missouri, before joining back up in the Marine Corps and getting married and all that, I was working at the St. Joe's. I can't remember what the hospital's name is. I think I'm getting hospitals mixed up. But I worked at a hospital, but I was a CNA, but I'd worked on the pediatric oncology ward. And I fucking loved it. I know that sounds crazy, but the contrast between taking care of kids who have cancer and some of them are dying versus working with or dealing with patients who are adults who are cancer and are dying, there is a stark contrast because the experience of life makes these adults fucking whiners. While with kids, they have nothing experience to relate it to. So they think this is just life. And they'll make the fucking best of it.
Wow.
And again, it goes back to that idea of play. The idea is just, okay, this is the best I can do. I'm going to do what I can. So they would play games with you and they would feel like shit, right? And we would just...
But they live in the moment.
They live in the moment.
Children live in the moment.
Yeah. And so I just loved working on the oncology ward. And so I wanted to become a doctor and do pediatrics and specialize on pediatric oncology. As I just loved working with kids. And to this day, I still love working with kids. Even I would prefer teaching kids than adults when it comes to jiu-jitsu. There are days, don't get me wrong.
There are days.
It's a stark contrast because the kids provide me the all the games that we come up with and like we play with in jiu-jitsu, the positional sparrings and the submission monsters and the chainsaw. All these were derived from teaching the kids, right?
And now you're translating into play for adults.
Yeah, right. And so the idea was just the kids give you grounding, but sometimes as you talk to any parent that's a stay-at-home, I need intellectual talk conversation. So that's where I enjoy the adult side, in which I can get more into the technical and the higher aspects of jiu-jitsu. While with the kids, you can't get frustrated with them. You can't get angry with them. You're right. I mean, we do, but it's also, we get frustrated with them because we're trying to teach them. And it's the idea of trying to teach them the social constructs of how to behave, how to do this. But I never get frustrated with them in the way of their capacity to learn. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I get more frustrated with just trying to teach them the social constructs, right? Because that's also a parent and family side. And if they don't follow the same social constructs that the community as a whole share, you get a little weird dynamics.
Well, and it shows with behavior.
Yeah.
If they're not coachable, that's a lot harder than those who are coachable.
Mm-hmm. So,
and I see coaching of anything, especially with children, because I've gotten a coach at Insurgent with the kids, and then also some soccer.
He's still a coach,
just not often. But I like to see it as, yes, we're providing skills for self-defense, some confidence, but really it's we're creating adversity and then persevering through. And guess what? That's life. And the more that we can create those kind of opportunities for their own growth and wisdom, I'm hoping to influence decisions down the road that, we all have forks in the road where we can go down a really bad path or we can choose a different path. And hopefully having chosen or experienced these things through combat, they'll hopefully be better equipped for life.
Yeah. And I completely agree. And I think you would agree, like when the kids come on the mat and they face those tough situations and they start crying and they want to quit. And it's like we come back and we're like, no. The only thing you can control in this moment is your ability to breathe. So take a fucking breath.
Yes.
Yes, this sucks. Yes, you're getting choked out, but you're not choked out yet. So take a deep breath and work through it. We're giving you all the tools. And that's what I think a lot of, we're parents, right? That's the hard part, right? I think I even wrote about that on a post, is just the balance between taking away the suffering so that they can succeed, but do we allow them to succeed long-term by taking away that suffering now? But yet we also want to teach them how to make decisions and to deal with that suffering. So as a parent, how do we fucking deal with that? And as a coach, how do I do that? And then we see that with adults and we see that with kids. And I try to instill that with the kids. That's the biggest thing I try to instill with the kids is take a deep breath. Learn that now, because that's going to assist you so much more.
It's going to translate forever.
Yeah, because it's really the only thing. Because if you think about breathing, no one that I am aware of, maybe science knows, no one can stop their heart. But you can stop yourself from breathing to the point of passing out.
And then the body says,
and then the body just starts rebreathing again. But the ability that we can override that mechanical biological system to stop ourselves from breathing does tell you that breathing, I think, what's his name? The breathing guy?
Oh, Wim Hof?
Wim Hof would completely agree. It's the one thing that we completely control in our life, and it's the only thing we're allowed to control. From day one till we die. But yet it's involuntary that we have to always continue to breathe. But we have the ability to stop it. Why would that be? Isn't that a weird biological system? Why is it that we can stop ourselves to breathe to the point of passing out, but it's the one element that we have to have to continue to live? But I digress.
Wild.
Yeah. Anyway, things I think about when washing my hair in the shower.
I love it. I mean, now I'm going to think about it washing my hair.
But that's the thing is that that's the first thing I always try to tell the kids. I just had that conversation with one of our little girls, Tinley. Her and her brother were doing a knee tap game, the wrestling knee tap, and they both slammed into each other. And of course, she's 4 years old, and man, I mean, they slapped. You could hear the crack of the skull, type of deal. The brother was fine. She was like, "Oh," and I just looked at her. I was like, "I know you're 4. I know you want mom, but take a deep breath." She finally got a little bit of her breath. We had to get through the initial pain. Like, I know it hurts, but you got to just deal with it. But it will subside. But so knowing that it's going to subside, just take a deep breath and just breathe through it. It will eventually subside. and eventually it'll go away. That's the beautiful thing about time, right? It eventually takes everything away. It makes it more bearable anyway, at least. So, anyway, I don't know where we originally were talking about. And,
Well, so I think you.
oh, my life story. So yeah, I got.
Yeah, so you were divorced. You're back in Chino. You stopped Blackjack.
Yeah,
And
and then met Michelle. I started working at the hospital as a CNA at this hospital in Prescott Valley. Got into telemetry. I started doing that's when I was doing the school. Didn't go the route of medical only because at the time I was married and she was going to be stationed. So I actually had applied for a medical school down at not ASU, down all the way down to Tucson. Not northern, not ASU. What's the big school down there?
U of A.
Yes, U of A. Thank you, Jesus. So I went down and applied actually at U of A and had to actually withdraw my application for the med school program because she got stationed over in Korea. And so I was like, well, if we're going to stay married, I need to find something so we're not separated. So now we have a kid. So that's when I decided, well, I'm always interested in computers and I love gaming. So the route was to go get my degree in software engineering and become a programmer. And so I doing that, really enjoyed it, and then got divorced. So I just would take Ella to the mall where they had like a little play area, and I would do this once a week at least to get her like somewhat social because at this time she wasn't old enough to be in like daycare or not daycare, but like a school, right? And I was a stay-at-home dad, and my hours were offset of my dad and so forth. So he watched her when I worked, and I watched her when he was working. Right?
Wow.
So it just kind of really worked out. But it did have its drawbacks. So anyway, we would go, I'll get to the drawbacks, but so I'd go to the mall and let Ella play. And of course, at this time, I'm divorced getting divorced and been separated now for almost 7 months at this time. So of course, I'm interested in women. So anyway, this girl would show up every now and then with her son, about the same age as Ella, but I wouldn't see her very much. And she was going through school. You could tell because she would have big books and she was just always studying. And then every now and then she would be there with some other guy. I assume was baby daddy. And so anyway, that was about the extent of my dating out that. It was just like, oh, she's cute. Never get an opportunity. My dad's schedule changed, and so the scheduling for working as a blackjack dealer and raising a kid just was no longer conducive. So I had to find a new job. So I got a job at the hospital. I didn't want to be a CNA at this point because I was already so deep in software engineering that was like my big interest, and I was sure as hell wasn't going to change my major now. So did that, got into telemetry, and then just happened to see that girl that I would always see at the mall. Happened to be at the big orientation that Prescott Valley just opened a big giant hospital at this time in Prescott Valley. Yavapai Regional, Prescott Valley region, whatever. And anyway, the girl that I always saw at the mall just happened to be there at orientation. And there was Michelle. And went over and asked her out, took her to Wendy's, of all the places, the places to take, and moved in. She moved in 3 months later, and we've been together now 20 years. Wow. We've got hers, mine, and ours. So we have Ella, my daughter from my first marriage. We got her son that she would take. The guy was the baby's daddy, but that was their visitation. He had to have supervised visitation, and then we had our own together. And so that's kind of how I caught up with Michelle, and then life just did what it did, and here we are in Flagstaff. And then you met her when she was a paramedic, and you was your police officer, or not police officer, firefighter. Didn't mean to insult you. Kidding. And so yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I met Michelle. Got together. We have 20 years together. Very tumultuous. I wouldn't say tumultuous in the sense of like, it was just a hard struggle trying to mix two families. I'm not an easy man to live with. She's definitely not an easy woman to live with. Don't tell her I said that. Sorry, babe. But I mean, it was a very big learning curve. The combination, I don't know. To this day, I cannot tell you, and she probably can't tell you why she stayed, but she has. Mm. I know I wasn't an easy man. I have a temper. It was never physical. Don't get me wrong, but I was not. I had a really bad temper. Always had in my entire life. Big screamer, yeller. You know, and I just don't know. And it's just calmed down as I've gotten older, wiser, and then ever since the accident of breaking my neck, I've even got more calmer, more introspective. What would it be?
Oh. So can we go? I really want to get to the injury and then what's happened since, but can we go back a little bit to your spark and your idea for Insurgent? I know you mentioned it early on that Michelle had this idea from the gym she went to.
Mm-hmm.
You were doing jujitsu out of a garage. What made you want to pursue entrepreneurialism at that point?
Because I always wanted freedom. So, odd as it sounds, if you work for somebody else, you're always at the slave of their schedule. So when I say I want freedom, I just wanted the ability to say, you know what? Looking at my schedule, I can clear time for this. I don't have to ask anyone for permission. I just have to plan it to make sure that it happens. And entrepreneurship is really the only route that would ever allow you that freedom. I'm not saying that corporations don't give you a 2-week notice and you can request off, but it's kind of goes to that idea. I don't want to request off. It's my life. If I want to
With time.
yeah, let me schedule my time, and I will go. But don't tell me I can or cannot go. I don't want to ask for permission. Like what's that saying? Better ask permission than forgiveness. It's kind of that same concept, I guess. That's why I went entrepreneurship, and I always pursued that. But I also going all the way when I was a kid, I experienced that a lot more than what most people do. So when I was a kid going through high school, I had to pay for my own car. My dad helped. Don't get me wrong, my dad helped me, but I worked my ass off. I had my own little side hustle. It's called Yard Work by the Man. I just go around to these elders in Yavapai Hills, Links Estates, places like that in Prescott, and just did yard work. And, I'd get paid $10 an hour. And at that time, back in the 90s, that was amazing. Yeah. Right. And I did that all summer. So I was able to make a lot of money. So at that point, I was already in an internship mind and saw the freedom that it afforded me. And so when I started actually working into the corporate world, my first actual job was with that Whataburger in Prescott. And I did that job. I shouldn't say that was my first. My first job was actually working with my dad in construction, but it was a laborer. But I still had a lot of freedom on whether I was going to go into work or not. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I was on payroll, but it was more based on what my schedule was available. So it was still freedom to me, not dictated by the 9 to 5. So then I got an actual job at Whataburger, and that got me through high school. So I was working full-time nights at Whataburger when I was a senior in high school. But you have to understand, I only had 3 classes in my senior year. I tried to graduate early, and by the time the semester was done or the year was done, I only had 2 classes. It was English and math, and I had to have one more, which was like a teacher's assistant, because I had to have at least 3 or X amount of credits.
Right.
And the teacher I was working for knew me, so I never showed up. He didn't need me, but he just let me be his assistant. So I worked nights at Whataburger, get off work. All my classes were in the morning, so I'd immediately go in, do my math, do my English, go home, sleep, go back, because my girlfriend was living with me, pick her up from school, take her home. She would then take me to work, and then I'd work all night. She'd come pick me up. It was just this big cycle.
Yeah.
So I already had the internship. So when I got that first job, I fucking hated it. I hated having to be in someplace at a certain time and then be stuck there, regardless of if there was actual work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
I hated it. Right. And I know at Whataburger, it's one of those, some jobs you have to just sit there. You're customer service. So you're waiting for customers to need you. So there is going to be always that hurry up and wait.
Mm-hmm.
But fuck. Screw that. You were fired just being at the station. You're like, dude, I could be at home right now. I could literally be in this station if we got a call within 5 minutes. or I'll just meet you there in my civil car, right? That's what got me into intern, but it had to do with the freedom. Paradoxical, you don't have the freedom. The job, the business takes so much out of you in the beginning that you really don't get that first freedom, and that's where a lot of people learn and burn out. And I think that's not so much why businesses fail. I think that's why a lot of businesses fail within their first 2 years. It's not so much of just luck, it's just the burnout.
Because you're never off.
You're never off. Like Michelle will tell you, I was at the Insurgent for that first year, 2 years, 24 hours. I mean, I was even sleeping there at one point just because we were so busy on the first initial opening that it consumed all the freedom. But I did it with the hopes that I'd gain the freedom that I want later down the road.
Sacrifice now, get paid off later.
Given all the circumstances that have circumvented since opening, you know, like partnerships, getting sued, getting the injury, getting COVID. So it's always like a reset. Once I feel like, oh God, we can start breathing, something else would come along and it would just hit the pockets, which then just causes you to have to grind again. Right. So it's just that's the
and the ups and downs.
The ups and downs. And I mean, it's doing good now. I mean, it's doing relatively well. We all are feeling this 2026 economic downturn pretty heavy, with all this turmoil, geopolitical shit. But the idea is that we're persevering. You just hope for the community around you to support you, you know? So, yeah. Anyway.
So going back, I want to get to the injury for sure, but there was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm having a hard time remembering what that was. You just mentioned it, and then I was like, oh yeah, we need to dig into that too. I know you've had some ups and downs through the process of owning it. There was one that stood out. Actually, no, I was thinking outside of the... Sorry, audience. Your journey to black belt.
Yeah.
Very unique.
I don't know about unique. Maybe, I don't know, because again, it's that perspective and my side of things. In the beginning, I was really, you know, you want the coveted black belt, right? And then as I started the jiu-jitsu journey and just the political shit in jiu-jitsu, and I think it's in any martial arts, is fucking ridiculous. It's ego driven. I just have a big disdain for the jiu-jitsu community when it comes to that. But yet on the other side, there's don't get me wrong, there's a great positive side, like we were talking about before, of that community and I know that I could call you. I know I could call Ian. I know I could call Kip. There's any of my students, if I needed to call and say, hey, I need some help, you'd be like, no, you guys would be like, okay, I'm right there. You'd be right there, because you also know that you would call me up and be like, hey, within limits and capacities, right? I'm not going to call you and say, dude, I need $1 million or I need to go hide a body, right? I'm not, there's levels, right?
Hey, what? Some of our guys do that for us.
Exactly. But the idea is that, but we have that.
Yeah.
So I got off on, I lost track, but,
your journey,
so the black belt, so with the black belt, with everything that went on between that 4 year when I first started to up to when we lost the other black belt that we hired on at Insurgent, and his whole ordeal when he left, and the way he treated me because I didn't attend classes or because I was the owner and I disagreed with some of the methods that he was using to teach, you know, screaming and yelling at students. No 45-year-old wants another grown man yelling and screaming at me because I messed up a move that at the end of the day doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? I don't think in the years you've been on my mat, I've gotten stern, but I don't think I've ever screamed and yelled at an adult.
No,
you know, and that's what he would do. And
I think that's a hard dynamic, because on one hand you're a student, and on the other hand you're a boss.
Yeah.
And so that sounds really difficult to navigate.
Yeah, and I would not, and the only time I would ever involve myself with his technique was he was on the mat. Don't misunderstand. I never discussed with him how he taught on the mat. It was always behind closed doors. It was never in a public setting.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this way, once he stepped on the mat is his. Yes, I own the building, but I hired him to do a job.
Mm-hmm.
Let him do his fucking job. But once his job or the performance of his job begins to impact my business, which again, with the yelling of students, that's where the disconnect and the bullying, the heads would start to butt, because that's how he was taught.
Mm-hmm.
And so I suffered, so he has to suffer too. I got yelled at, so I have to yell at. And that goes back to that whole idea when we're talking about raising kids. Just because that's what your parents did doesn't mean it was the right way, and nor does it mean it's the right way for your kid, right? So anyway, we had a lot of butt heads. He was going through a lot of social things, personal things in his life. He moved back to Florida, and then he moved back, and blah, blah, blah. So he left, and that's when Michelle looked at me and was like, you know what? You just need to teach it. You just take it over. You can do this. And so that's what I did. And that journey was hard. And during that 4-year period between garage days to that last instructor that I officially had, that I was actually being taught by, my sense of what the belt meant got tarnished and destroyed. I saw that the belt and the symbolism of that belt and what people perceive it as is tainted. It's corrupted. It's no longer about the journey. It's about, well, I just got black belt, so look at me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's the biggest issue that I've had with the black belt, with the system of the belt system. Anyway, I rank you guys because, like you said, to many of you, you guys still have that core value of what that belt means. And I know for you and your dad, it means something even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, I have no issues with the belt. I want you to earn that, because I don't want to just give you one.
No,
because you made a promise to your dad. You don't just take it just to take it. You take it because you earn it.
exactly.
And that's the issue I have with the belt, is most people think that because, oh, I show up.
Yeah, I've been on the mats this long.
That doesn't
should have it.
Bullshit. And even to this day, I disagree heavily with a lot of the professors out there. It's like, well, it's about time. Well, they put time on the mat. Yeah, but are they the standard that you have?
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. If they're not at the standard you have, then it doesn't give two shits about the time, right?
Could be 2 years. It could be 20.
Yeah, but I also understand that other side, because you're going to have the students that are going to just show up and be like, well, dude, I've been here for 5 years. I should be getting something. But they're not going to see the perspective that I look at and say, yeah, you've been here for 5 years, but you only show up maybe 2 times a week, maybe 2 times a month. Or they'll be consistent for a while. We have those. We know that. We have those that are consistent for like a month, and then all of a sudden they disappear for 3. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, we're going to be doing ranking. All of a sudden they show up. It's like, dude, this is not how that works.
Right.
It's not about being seen. It's about the progress. And that's where I have issues with the belt system.
Yeah.
Because there's the value of time, of just being, I've arrived, so I should my participation, I should get this. When I'm looking at it going, no. If this is what you value, then sure. And I even say that at every ranking, right? I'll give it to you for your time, but it doesn't mean I think you earn it.
And what matters to you.
Yeah, so it depends on what you matter. So if I didn't rank you right now, then I'm assuming you have the same value that I have. And if you don't, that's what I tell you guys, come and talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to come to me and express like, well, I think I'm deserving of it, then I'm not going to argue with you. I would just be like, okay, well, you've fallen into that 2-year program of every belt is 2 years. Here's your new belt, right? Because I am in a business and I still have to satisfy the customer. So that's the biggest thing. But I have my students, and I think I'm very vocal about that. I'm very open about that. So all my students know, like, look, I'm not being a dick, but if you want the value of the belt, or do you want just my participation, I'll give you the one. You decide. It goes with that whole perspective and what we were talking about earlier, right? It's your story. Yeah, it's a net sum game to me. I die tomorrow. It doesn't affect me any whether you have your belt or not. It's how do you feel about how you receive that belt?
Mm-hmm.
Can you look at
Did you
yourself?
earn it, or what did you
Exactly. Did you earn it based on just participation because you showed up, or did you earn it because the instructor or the person that you are there to respect finds that you are deserving on it?
Mhm.
And that's just that's a perspective, that's a self journey on your own, right?
Sure.
So anyway, so that's the belt system to me in a whole.
Yeah.
As an instructor, it doesn't matter to me not.
And when you took over as an instructor, you were
A blue belt.
a blue belt.
Yeah, so I was a blue belt, but at that time I think I was a blue belt for almost
You were what?
2.5. I probably know I was a blue belt. So I held my white belt for 2 years. I held my blue belt for 4 because it was a 2 year, and then I got under Jay, and then he had me hold it for a while because he wanted me to be under him. I mean, I don't blame him. He was this blue belt,
Trying to
this guy owning this gym, and saying, "Hey, I need an instructor." Never seen me before. God bless Jay, Jay Pages. Um, God bless him. He met me once. He watched me roll once, and he gave me a stamp of approval. And kind of gave me got a lot of great advice and guidance. I studied, as you know, because I think when you came in is when I started teaching full time. By the time you came in, and at that time I was waking up at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, putting on a Danaher BJJ Fanatics video,
Mhm.
and sitting there for 8 hours watching an instructional video, trying to understand Jiu Jitsu. And so a lot of the stuff that I've taught has been
self-taught.
it's been self-taught,
Yeah.
right?
Using resources available.
Yeah, and
And
picking Jay's brain, and
Yeah.
he gave me a lot of good information, a lot of reading, a lot of videos, because he was 2.5 hours away from me. It's not like I can just hop down and go. And we didn't have any black belts up here at that time that were of any value, or they were already committed to their brand, and were very anti anyone outside, right? Unless I specifically was under their
I'm going to
school.
fly your banner. And
Yeah, so it was like I either had to change my business name or fuck you, you're gone. And so Jay, just for whatever reason, he saw something in me and took me in, and yeah, and here we are.
Yeah.
It's been a long, long journey, that's for sure, for the coveted black belt. But now I rarely wear it. It stays in my gym bag, and only put it on when we do rankings.
Right.
So I don't even have my other belts. I mean, that just tells you how the belts don't mean anything. It's about the self respect enough I've persevered through all this, and even through this injury, which we're going to get into, I assume, right?
Yeah.
I'm still persevering and still teaching despite my inability to drill, my inability to roll, and so forth.
I think that's a great segue into the injury.
Yeah, so the injury, recap on it. First and foremost, I just want a disclaimer. Those that are wanting to do jiu-jitsu, this is a complete fluke. The injury was a complete fluke. And we come to realize that I have a genetic issue in my actual neck. So I was drilling, or no, we were doing
takedown.
Yeah, we were doing takedown. It was positional sparring takedowns, but it was a king of the mound. And me and the student were going. I shot in for a takedown, a double leg. My head got stuck under like his belly or I don't know, but I couldn't slip it to the side. And then my head got stuck. And then when he went to sprawl, my head went back. And that's as far back as I can move my head now. I never thought about it, but it went further back than that. And that's where the C3, C4 slipped, they think. They think it was one of those two. They don't know which one. It slipped out, slammed into the spinal cord, caused paralysis from the neck down, completely collapsed. Thank God I could still breathe. My wife says I was paralyzed for up to 5 minutes, maybe longer, between me saying, "Oh God, I'm paralyzed," to call my wife, to paramedics showing up, rolling me over, getting to the, who knows, I could have been paralyzed for the entire ride. I mean, I could feel a little bit of my toes when they would do their checks, you know how they do. And that was just an experience all on its own. Pain I've never felt anyone that says I've had nerve pain, my respect. And if you're dealing with it daily, my respect. I mean, I deal with it daily, but it's very dulled, and it's normally just isolated into my elbows. And so, yeah. So the injury was a fluke. Had X-rays, tore the ligaments in the front of my neck. No surgery or anything, thank goodness. Everything still seems stable on all the flexion tests that I've had to do with my neck. I still have a really bad contusion on the spinal cord because of the genetic issue in my neck, which is my neck is as straight as a board. There's no curve to it. Everything's kind of locked, and they've obviously my age and the lifestyle that I've lived. There's a lot of degenerative bone in my neck. So I've gotten full clearance from the doctor with a caveat: you can roll and you can drill, but if the injury ever happens again, it will most likely be permanent. So that's the dilemma I'm in right now. I don't want to give up on jiu-jitsu, so I won't. And so I can't drill because I can't put a lot of pressure and movement on the neck. I can't take a crossface, right? So these are the things that I have to even think about. Even the doc was like, even driving, if somebody comes in to rear end you and your head swings back, and if it swings back too far, you're done too. It's just, here you are.
Yeah.
But everything's stable. And they've offered surgery. They said that we could do the fusions, but he's like, you have the genetic issue, which just caused more pressure on the preceding bones, that you would have to get another fusion, and then those would cause more compound. It would just compound. Mm-hmm. So every time you fuse, the bottom joints take on more pressure, which then they degrade, which then you'd have to fuse those, and it would just continue, and then I would end up being never to be able to move and never roll again.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at in the last 3 months. Just trying to rebalance how to teach, how to re-navigate stress therapy. Like you said, grappling is a therapy. Yeah, I don't have that. Now what?
How to persevere through that.
Yeah. So
yeah, I recently I have a little article, LinkedIn article I called the mic drop, and
nice.
And I release, weekly, every 2 weeks I'll write something that's on my mind. And one for me was hanging up the cleats, because I played soccer for 30 plus years, and that was my childhood love. That helped me stay out of trouble in a lot of ways. And then not nearly as a severe moment, but realizing at age 40 I was getting hurt more in soccer than I was in combat sports and jiu-jitsu, and going, man, it's really hard to hang up the cleats. But then, here I am 4 years later, and realizing there was a great shift in, now I can teach, now I can coach, now I can pass that on to the next generation. And I feel like there's a little bit of mirroring in our stories there, where, you're not quitting.
Yeah.
You're just transitioning in what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah. And I think there is definitely a parallel, where my parallel is in the transition of how I teach, and because most instructors, right, hands-on, they demonstrate the move, and then they say, okay, class, go and do it. Now I'm like, okay, you two guys come together, you guys demonstrate, and it changes my perspective. Where I was 2D, right, where I'm sitting here and holding on to somebody, now I'm outside looking in, and I'm seeing more. So my perspective has changed a great deal. And I think for you, right, you're going into teaching you're transitioning from the experience and saying, okay, well, this is all the knowledge I have. Now I'm going to try to correlate that knowledge in a way that's comprehensive for you kids, right? So I do definitely see a parallel in that way, where we're both trying to learn how to teach. I'm just trying to evolve my teachings. I've been teaching already for 5 years prior to that, into the injury, right? And you're now going into that skill set, and now you're taking your skill. And so, yeah, there's definitely a parallel of hanging up the cleats and saying, okay, well, I can't participate, so how do I still participate? Right? So I can't
It's so
participate.
important.
Yeah.
You don't forget about what you did. Just transition it. So you're having to transition your teaching style, and then also you're having to find other things that keep you grounded, right?
That's the hard part I'm having right now. Yeah, I've gotten into, I'm obviously, as you know, I've written some papers on science, but it's like trying to occupy myself. I'm just so, my brain has to have something to do. I'm not one that cannot not have something to think about, ponder, do. Don't get me wrong, I can sit and relax just like anyone else. I can meditate. But at the end of the day, I need something to occupy me. And so that's what I do. I just find,
Science, philosophy.
yeah, right. And then right now, me and Michelle were walking today and talking about like, I need to do something physically active though, because I can feel my body
Yeah.
not being what it used to be. We don't have the connection that we used to have in the way of physical activity and so forth. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation regarding me and the body, but
We'll have you back.
yeah. But the idea is that it's just trying to find something to keep us going, right? You give up your cleats, you got to have something to replace it, some other different passion. And I'm trying to keep that passion alive with teaching, and this new philosophy and change has definitely helped. So yeah, where do you want to go from there?
I think that's a good segue into where do we find you? What's next for Morgan Bags?
What's next? So I don't know. I did write some scientific papers. You can follow me on Substack. That's where I talk about all my scientific papers. High Nazgul, at High Nazgul, one word, HIGHNAZGUL. High Nazgul, big Hobbit fan or big Lord of the Rings fan. So you can follow me there. Then of course Instagram, same at tag, but on Instagram. But that's more my Jiu Jitsu Insurgent business page, type of deal. Me teasing the hell out of my wife as much as I can. As far as next steps, I don't know. Michelle's got her big foundation she's trying to get up and going, the Frontline Phoenix. So a bunch of likes on that to help her get going. Anything we can do to help support. I know she's got some things coming up that we would love to have you participate on. She's wanting to get something together regarding communities, people with small businesses, people with speaking engagements to come in and talk and so forth. So I know she's got that going. But as for me, I just kind of flow wherever it goes at this point. Since my injury, my outlook on life is just kind of go with the flow. It's a net zero game at the end of the day. So,
but you're still living,
still just trying to experience as much as I can experience without worrying too much about what happens tomorrow. Because what does he say in Kung Fu Panda? I don't know. Future is this, past is this. That's why that's why they call it the present. It's a gift, right? So yeah, that's what I'm trying to live as.
Lean into the gift.
Yeah, lean into that gift as much as possible. It's not easy though, especially now with everything going on these days.
Well, you've got a good community around you.
I agree, especially you.
I'm happy to be a part of it.
Get his book. Self-made. This man right here, he is definitely self-made.
Through community.
Through community.
It's struck out for a reason.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you for being on. I really appreciate you, your advice, your story, your mentorship and friendship. Really appreciate it all.
I appreciate you too. Thank you.